If you look at the Ottawa real estate market stats for July 2025 in isolation, it actually looks pretty good. It's very similar to what we saw in June, where compared to the previous terrible years, 2023 and 2024, it's actually looking pretty okay. But there's a couple of reasons for this that don't have to do with the real estate market recovering and everything becoming awesome, and more with what we're comparing it to and what the rest of the year leading up to the summer has looked like. One of the biggest things that I think is playing into the relatively nice stats that we've been seeing the last couple of months is the spring was unusually quiet for a couple of reasons, but the main one I think was the general uncertainty in the economy around the Trump tariffs and just generally what was going on in the world. Now that we're getting into the later part of the year, people seem to have at least gotten used to that uncertainty, even if it hasn't completely gone away, and have become a little more comfortable coming out of their shell and looking at properties. While the market in general looks like it's doing pretty well, there are some exceptions. Again, we're going to go to the condo market, which has been struggling so far this year. Not as much as it has been in the bigger centers like Vancouver and Toronto, but in Ottawa, as we'll see in the stats, we are definitely seeing price decreases and sales volume decreases as well. I don't think that's something that's going to go away anytime soon. So let's get into the stats. But before we do that, I did want to mention as well that on July 30th, there was another Bank of Canada meeting. It made all the news headlines, so if you're watching this, you're probably already aware, but they did hold the policy rate exactly where it already was. And to be honest, the Bank of Canada making moves for the rest of the year is probably not going to be something that affects you unless you have a variable rate that's tied specifically to the Bank of Canada overnight rate. And the reason I say that is because of this graph here. This basically tracks what's been going on with the Bank of Canada policy interest rates since the pandemic, 2020. You can see when the pandemic started, they dropped rates substantially, kept them low until things went really crazy in early 2022, brought them up sharply, left them up there for a while, and now we're back down into this blue band here, which is the neutral Bank of Canada rate. So this is the rate between 2.25% and 3.25%. And according to the Bank of Canada, this is where they keep rates if they want to not really have an impact on the economic activity. So when they're in this band, they're not trying to speed up the economy to stimulate it, and they're also not trying to slow it down due to inflation. They're trying to keep things steady as she goes. And regardless of whether or not they drop rates another couple of times this year, I think everybody speculates, even if they do drop rates, it's going to be maybe a quarter point here, half a point there. We are still going to be well within that band. We are at 2.75. So even with a couple of cuts, we're not going to get to the place of like 2% where they're going to be trying to stimulate the economy. So again, if you have a variable mortgage rate, this will have an impact immediately on your mortgage payment. But if you're looking for things to speed up the way they were back in this era of like 2020 and 2021, 2022, that is very likely not going to happen anytime soon. The Bank of Canada has no appetite for that right now. So that's what's going on with the interest rates. Unfortunately, no help is coming on that front. Things are probably going to stay pretty steady in that regard for a while, unless things really take a dump with the economy, unless the tariffs hit really hard, in which case they might have no choice but to start to stimulate things again. Now, getting into the stats themselves, we're going to take a look at what's gone on overall in Ottawa, all property types. So we saw a sales activity of 1,318 properties, which is up about 5% from July of 2024. Number of new listings is up 11.7%. A lot of these are condos. Months of inventory, we're looking at 3.2%. So as a market in general, anything from 1 month to 4 months of inventory is still considered a seller's market. So as an overall market, we are still in seller's market territory. But as we're going to see, that differs a little bit based on the property type that you are looking at. The average price of a property in Ottawa was $695,000. List to sales price ratio is about 98%. So people on average are getting about 2% off of the asking price. We're not seeing too many properties go way over asking, but we are still seeing some that are really in demand, particularly in the townhouse sector where things are pretty brisk. Median days on market, we're looking at 24, which is up a couple of days from last year. So things are sitting on the market a little bit longer. If we drill down on the individual property types, looking at the detached markets, things are again looking pretty good, much like in June. Sales activity is up 3.4% from last July, 2024. The number of new listings is up 5.6% as well. So we're seeing a few more people go onto the market. Months of inventory, we're looking at 3.2 months of inventory. So still in that seller's market territory, but creeping up gradually towards more balanced market, which is between 4 to 6 months of inventory. The average price up 3.5% to $852,000. List to sales price ratio is again sitting around that 98% point. And the median days on market is 3 weeks at 21 days. So it takes about 3 weeks to sell the average property. If you're priced well and you're presenting properly, you can definitely sell in a week or two. But if you're looking for that, earlier in the pandemic, 2021, 2022 price point, or even anything close to that, you're going to be on the market for a while. All it takes is a quick look at the MLS, and you can see many properties that have been sitting for a month or 2 months or more. Now, looking at the townhouse sector, this is probably the brightest spot. You can see for sales activity, we're up 22.5% from 2024. So things in the townhouse sector have been moving really well. Again, the way that CREA breaks down their stats here, this includes townhouse condos as well as freehold townhouses. New listings are up 36%. So we're seeing a lot of these sorts of properties hit the market as well. Months of inventory, we're looking at 2.3. So firmly in seller's market territory here. Things are moving relatively quick. Average price, $560,000. List to sales price ratio is a little bit higher. We're at 98.5%. So getting closer to that 99% point. Median days on market is a bit weird here. So 24.5, up from 19 days in 2024. So this doesn't really jive with the experience that I and many of the colleagues that I've been talking to have been experiencing. My only guess here is that some of the condo townhouses might be dragging up this average a little bit, or this median, I should say, because the market in the townhouse territory has actually been pretty brisk. So I was surprised to see the median days on market this high, but there it is. The median days on market, 24.5 days. And unfortunately, as we look at the apartment condo territory, this is the not so bright spot. So this is nothing that is new. Apartment condos are struggling in Ottawa just like they are everywhere else. The good news is they're not struggling as hard as they are in the bigger markets like Vancouver and Toronto. But as we can see here, the sales volume is still way down. Only 181 of them have been sold in July 2025, down 23% from the previous year. The months of inventory is the only one that has actually made it officially to balanced market territory. And we can see that's gone up quite a bit since July 2024. We were at 4.6 months of inventory. Again, months of inventory, for those of you who haven't been paying attention to the channel for too long, is basically if we were to take all the properties that were sitting on the market at the end of the month and sell them at the rate that they had been selling for that period, it's how long it would take for us to run out of inventory. And it's a way for us to track market absorption. And it's the main stat that we use to decide seller's market, buyer's market, or balanced market. The average price, we're looking at $430,000, which is down about 2%. List to sales price ratio, you can see there's a little more leverage for buyers here. They're getting slightly better deals, negotiating down to 97.5% of the asking price, generally speaking. I can tell you that listings that have been sitting for a longer period of time, I've been seeing, 5-10% discounts in some cases, sometimes even a little bit more. People who are really looking to unload, particularly newer condos, but even the older ones that have been sitting a little while, the people who are recognizing that the market for condos is not very good right now, and it doesn't look like it's going to get better anytime soon. Median days on market is quite a bit higher here. We're looking at 37, so over a month to sell the median condo property or condo apartment property, and that's up 10 days from just the previous year. I thought it would also be worth taking a look at the benchmark prices. So the benchmark prices are a little bit better, in my opinion, than what's going on with the average price. The home price index benchmark price, which is what's in the graph here, removes outliers, whereas the average price in the previous slides that I show you is affected by, if a $5 million property sells, that's going to drag the whole average up. Whereas when the home price index benchmark price, they remove those outliers and you get a more real idea of what properties are selling for. So we can see here in all three sectors, the detached, the townhouse, and the apartment condo sectors, property values have been going up very slightly throughout the year. So this is from December 2024 up until July of 2025. We can see we've seen a decent little increase, 683 to 704 in the benchmark price of a detached property, slightly bigger increase, relatively speaking, in the townhouse properties, and a small little increase in the property values of the apartment condos. So I just find this graphs like this are good to look at because there's so much noise out there as far as what the media is saying around what prices are doing and the market's collapsing, the market's going up. We're not really sure what's happening. From a price perspective, if you price properly, it's been pretty flat for the last 6 months or so. Definitely down from the peaks a few years ago, but things are pretty okay from a price perspective. That being said, the sales volumes are not there. So you have to be priced appropriately if you want to be getting one of these sales. Otherwise, you're going to be one of those people that's sitting on the market for, 60, 90 days. These stats here only track the sales. It doesn't tell the story of the number of listings that are sitting on the property. That's better reflected, that are sitting on the market rather. That's better reflected in the months of inventory. And to be honest, from a buyer's perspective, it does feel pretty good to get out there and actually have some leverage in your negotiations. You're still going to be facing some multiple offers if you're in competition for a really nice townhouse in a good neighborhood, for example. But for a property that's been sitting a little while, you can really leverage yourself some good deals, especially if you happen to find a motivated seller. I really hope this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions about the Ottawa market or the real estate market in general, never hesitate to reach out. Sorry for getting this one out a little bit late this month. My wife and I actually welcomed our first kid just over 2 weeks ago, so it's been a bit of a scramble getting my own house in order personally. But it's been a really fun first couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to getting next month's update out in a little more of a timely manner. As always, reach out if you need anything. Have a great rest of your month, and have a great day. Take care.